I was working on a video about ABA, actually quite a few videos, but one particular video in which I show a few clips of ABA and talk about, how ABA is kind of destroying this generation. It's going to come out soon, but for now, I was I was looking through these clips and a thought sort of occurred to me. There are some people that are really new to ABA and don't really understand the fundamental concepts and are still vulnerable to being taught some of the propaganda about ABA. And then there's people who already have their opinions straight. And already see the torture and doom ABA brings. And then there are people who are sort of in between who do feel uncomfortable about ABA. They feel something uncomfortable regarding ABA, but they can't put their finger on it. So this video is for those people. To start off, I would like to show some clips about communication, because autistic people are pretty good at communicating in terms of accuracy with all that info dumping and heightened vocabulary, or hyperlexia if you want to be scientific about it. But this comes at a cost. This makes the process of learning language harder and longer because the autistic mind is more concerned with the accuracy and quality of communication rather than just talking as much as possible and seeing what sticks. Now, you can argue that this is actually a pretty good sign, as the most intelligent and advanced organisms require the most time and nurture to develop. But nonetheless, you do need to teach the child, and you need to do so as early as possible. So, as you're watching this, take mental note of these questions. So, as you watch these clips, ask yourself these questions. How is the instructor teaching grammar? How is the instructor teaching vocabulary? And among other things, how is the teacher teaching the child? How is the instructor teaching the child to consider other people? And honestly, anything and everything that relates to communication and language.
Do this.
Do this.
Amazing! Let's go play!
I want apple. Want?
This makes it a powerful teaching moment.
There he is.
Now, ask yourself again, how are they teaching language? They aren't. You might have noticed something strange. They aren't actually speaking or communicating like anyone would, but instead, the teacher has conditioned the child to parrot what the instructor says. This is operant conditioning. You know how when you want your dog to do a particular trick, you give them a reward when they do it successfully? That's what it is. You see, there's a fine line between autistic children and dogs. And by fine line, I mean a fence. And what makes a better fence than the Pacific Ocean? But even then, it's kind of questionable if it's good for dogs either. Already, we see the core problem with ABA. It relies on operant conditioning, or something equally basic, to get everything done. It skips over actual psychology and trying to understand human nature, and skips straight to trying to reprogram people into whatever weird thing they want the child to be. Also, notice how these children are toddlers, and toddlers generally fit into the guilt versus initiative stage if you know the psychosocial stages.
Nice sitting. Good girl.
It begins with the SD, or discriminative stimulus.
Do this. Oh,
This is the instruction given by the therapist to the child.
Yep. Let's try it again. Do this. Oh, right. Good trying. I like how hard you're working.
It was actually pretty hard to find any clips for this video because ABA pretty much doesn't allow for socialization. And now there's another person next to the child, but the only interaction that happens is doing a trick for a reward. There's no actual socialization. At best, authoritarianism and obedience training. This is unhealthy for the child because it doesn't allow them to think at all. It doesn't allow them to be social or have personality. Now, some people may argue that people do learn through operant conditioning, and they say you learned from operant conditioning, and everyone learns from operant conditioning. This is radical behavioralism, and people unironically believe it. And honestly, it's just a rationalization to justify ultra-authoritarianism. Because let's be honest, these people want to control the child. There's no actual teaching. To defend ABA is deeply dehumanizing to autistic people because it posits that autistic people have a mind as simple as clams. After all, if they were any more complex, the danger of ABA would be revealed.
Rewards for correct responses. If the child enjoys these things, they can be wonderful.
Now, if you've been watching my videos, you may notice that I really like to use this clip. And that's because it's such a good clip to demonstrate the corruption of the ABA industry. Like, it was already corrupt from the start, but this goes to show how far they've gone. If I were to show this to an ABA person, they would rationalize it by saying that the child actually likes it. But that's the same argument for rapists. That's the same excuse rapists make. In fact, the fact that the child is quote-unquote enjoying it is actually what makes it terrible, because it's traumatizing to be forced to enjoy something. This is practically a stranger. The child doesn't know this person. The child doesn't consent to this. And keep in mind, this is not just this borderline pedophilic weirdo that's doing this. It's not even the only time this happens.
Tickle Daniel everywhere. You are such a ticklish guy. You do too. Let's get him and we can have a quick kiss. Mwah. Mwah. Okay, what we're gonna do with Teddy. Nice sitting, Daniel. What's that? What else do we need?
Popcorn.
Popcorn. Okay, you stay in your chair. I'll get the popcorn. Nice staying in your chair, buddy. What else do we need?
This happens a lot, but moreover, this happens with many people observing. It was the cameraman that decided to let this be, and it's the editor that had decided this should be in the final cut, and it's the scientists and CEOs that also approved of this. This was approved by at least 3 people. 3 adult people. The next part is either the most horrifying thing or just the most depressing thing to see.
Oh, got one. Oh, 2. Your turn. Oh, can you get it? Oh, good try.
And at one stage he did. Deirdre had no clue.
Tristan in there with you?
So I had to run after him.
Tristan, no.
You said the picture. Here, say more leg. Hey, again.
What you see here is a fight. a fight between the child and the Randian authoritarian. The authoritarian wants to take away the child's autonomy so they can do whatever screwed up things they want to do to the child. And you, the child, simply want to exist. You simply want to be who you are and do what you want without hurting other people. Well, they're trying to take away your desires, your ambitions, your thoughts, and your dreams. But these children keep on fighting. They keep on struggling to clench on to the last bits of humanity they have left before it's all taken away. But alas, the ABA therapists have already won. The moment you're thrown in, you're already doomed. And the worst part is how they describe it. This is a description of one of the children we saw earlier named Daniel, and let me read this for you. She requires him to stay seated rather than getting the items himself, to encourage him to practice using his words. Okay, this is just Kafka-esque, even if the premise is actually describing the child actually asking rather than barking what he is conditioned to do. This specifically encourages over-reliance on other people, which leads to learned helplessness eventually. And ABA in general encourages learned helplessness because the child can't actually do what they want. Some people may rebuttal that by saying that the child is getting what they want, which is kind of bullshit. Excuse my French there. But the real problem is its deception and Orwellianism. This isn't some cutesy son-daughter thing. What this is in reality is an attempt to make us a slave breed. And then it gets even worse. You see, because sitting still is difficult for Daniel, I'm gonna stop there and let the text speak for itself. Contrast this with the reality that this child is actively trying to get out of his seat and trying to actually decide for himself what he wants. If you want to see these clips for yourself, I've left the sources in the description below. And I do recommend seeing them because keep in mind that it's not just ABA itself, but the education system itself, at least in America, does draw a lot of inspiration from ABA and behavioralism. But at the same time, don't get demoralized like I did. Sure, the situation may seem bleak, and that's because it is. Permanent damage has already been done to the autistic community. And also, it's already bad that the autistic population is declining, but ABA and eugenics are accelerating this. But the one thing you should never do is fall into fatalism. No matter how hard you have been beaten, you can still go forward. Try some meditation and remind yourself that if we do things right on a political and personal level, we might be able to have children without them directly suffering the effects of ABA, similar programs, or autism awareness. And over time, the generational trauma will slowly fade away. This is autistic signing out.